Now, if you remember how the old tape recorders, cassette tape recorders worked, you got a twofer. Each cassette tape had two sides. And so when you listened to the first side, you flipped it, and then you got to hear what? Side B. And so this month, we're going to be doing side B. And it's interesting because we're going to follow the road trip that we're going on with Mark. He's taking us with Jesus through the whole gospel. And so we're going to look now at people, specific people. And one of the things that happens on any interesting road trip is that you get to meet a lot of people. And some are very normal, and some are very strange, and some are out there. Now, one of the things that I remember in one of the road trips that we took to North Carolina with our family is one day we got up and we went to have breakfast at a McDonald's. And guess who was there? You're not going to believe this. Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam was there. How many of you know who Uncle Sam is? Huh? Uncle Sam. Now, he's supposed to be the image of the United States, with the top hat, the striped jacket, all this. And so I thought he was fictitious, and my children thought he was fictitious until we got to meet Uncle Sam and his wife. And so it was amazing. I mean, this guy obviously was an actor, and he was on his way to Washington, D.C. for some July 4th celebrations. And the guy had it down pat. I mean, he really fooled me. I thought it was Uncle Sam. And we got to talking, and so he impressed my children because he started teaching them history in a way that was very original. And so when you go on a road trip, you meet a lot of interesting people. And so on a road trip with Jesus, you can rest assured that you're going to meet interesting people. And actually, when you look at Mark's road trip with Jesus, you see a lot of people. I mean, a lot of people. And one of the things that I want you to understand is in a very tight space. Remember, what do we call these little short stories? I'm teaching. Huh? Pericopes, okay? Pericopes. It sounds like the name of a parrot or something, but anyways, pericopes. And so we have this little, really small pericope, and we're going to meet today a gossipy leopard, or a gossiping leopard. And so you're going to get to hear his story. And the thing that caused my attention is we don't even know his name. One of the things that you find in Mark is that you're going to meet a lot of people and you're not going to know their name. Remember last week? What was Peter's mother-in-law's name? What was Peter's wife's name? And so there's a lot of people that are going to be actively involved in the story, and you don't even know their names, because the important thing is not who they are, but what happened to them, what they were involved in, what the story was. And so today we have a story like that. And so a man with a serious skin disease. Now, raise your hand if you've ever had to deal with acne. Okay? Now, I know it sounds kind of absurd, but a little bitty pimple can do what? Can cause havoc in your life, right? I mean, you deal with it, right? You deal with it, and so you have all these little off-the-counter medicines that you can use. But if you have to take your senior picture, and all of a sudden you have a pimple in the middle of your forehead, is that good or bad? And so you go crazy. Now, I'm the kind of guy that doesn't worry about that, and I actually kind of worried about that. So imagine people that worry, okay? And so I had friends of mine that would fall apart, okay? And so, we get it. This is something that's important. But here we're talking about something that is much more impacting than simple acne. We're talking about a skin disease. Now, in the Bible, there's 2 chapters that we don't have time to go over because they're really, really long. Leviticus 13 and Leviticus 14. And it is the prescription for how to deal with skin disease. Now, skin disease came in many, many different types. And so some of them, if the priest said you were okay, you were okay. And there was a list of things that you had to check out. And if the priest said you were not okay, then it got really serious. Then you were banished from your family, you were banished from your town, and you had to go around with a little bell, and you had to say, unclean, unclean, unclean. You could not relate to anyone, especially anyone that was involved in any of the religious rituals of the country at that time. And so this guy did not have it easy at all. In fact, his story begins in a very dark place. There was a man with serious skin disease, and the word for that is leprosy. There was a leper. Okay, this is how Mark gives it to us. And so it's a man that's already been diagnosed. He's already been thrown out. He's already been exiled in his own family, in his own country, in his own religion. And so this man has to deal with issues that some of us today can't even imagine. I see this person as the personification of failure. The personification of failure. How many of you like to fail? Nobody, right? How many of you like to go around with this L on your, hey, look, loser, loser. This man was the ultimate personification of failure. Failure in ways that you couldn't just fix. And his story is a very dark narrative of one failure after another. In fact, when our leper meets Jesus, okay, when our leper meets Jesus, he's at the point when all else fails. All else fails. Okay, have you ever been there where everything that you tried failed? I don't think there's too many of us here that would qualify for that. I mean, we've failed, but we haven't failed in a way that is the ultimate failure. When it says here that this man had a serious skin disease, when it says here that this man was a leper, I want you to understand that leprosy was the ultimate ticket to hell on earth. I mean, the minute that you were diagnosed with leprosy, your life just went down the tubes. And so today, this disease, known as Hansen's disease, is very rare. Thank God for that, right? It has been dealt with, and there's no treatment, there's no cure for it, but there are procedures that minimize the effects on a person's life. And we certainly don't treat these people as outcasts. But in the Bible, in the book of Leviticus, in the law of Moses, in the Torah, there's 2 whole chapters devoted, and you can do a whole study. I mean, if you have a chance, read them today, on how to diagnose and how to deal with this situation of skin disease called leprosy. And so the disease was seen by the ancients. I mean, God's the one that's telling Moses to write this down. And so leprosy was seen by the ancients as 2 things. A curse from God. Now, there are passages in the Bible where you are cursed by God, and one of those is involving plagues and involving disease and sickness. And so you see that. Remember the king that he says, I'm going to go inside the sanctuary. And the priest tells him, you can't go in there. It's only for the priest. And so he goes, I'm the king. So he walks in there, and when he goes like this, what happens? His hand turned white with leprosy. Okay? And so that was a curse from God. And now, it's also believed at that time that it was a curse from demons. If a demon wanted to really mess you up, what would he do? He would come and give you this disease, this gift from hell called leprosy, where you would be almost I mean, you've seen those movies of zombies? That's how the lepers were back then. They were the walking dead. It was a very, very ugly and nasty disease to have. And so these people were considered biblically, they were considered spiritually defiled. And so if you were spiritually defiled, everybody wants to be holy. We are called to holiness, right? God is holy. We are to be holy. And then the priest comes and says, hey, Simon, you're defiled. And you're defiled for life until you get rid of this leprosy. And you're going, I didn't ask for this. What did I do? And so you've been defiled. And so you are the unholy one. And the word that nobody wanted to pronounce is unclean. You are unclean. Before God, you are dirty. Before God, you can't show up because there's no dirt when he comes in. In his sanctuary, there's no dirt. In his presence, there's no dirt. And if you dare show up like that, you will be disciplined. And so this man has been given this condemnation. And so at some point in his life, and we don't know if he was a child, we don't know if he was a young man, a teenager, we don't know when his health failed him. He wakes up and he's got this little show of something, some symptom that we don't even know what it is. And all of a sudden he goes and people start saying, hey, you better get that checked. You better get that checked. You better get that checked. Now, it's one thing when your wife tells you got to get something checked. It's another one when your whole community is saying, you better get that checked. And so you go to the priest and he says, hey, man, we got to watch it for 7 days. In 7 days, if this thing doesn't change, guess what? You're done. So he comes back in 7 days, and everybody is like, on pins and needles, and he gets the word, it's leprosy. Pack up and leave. You can't be anywhere around us. You can't be in your house. You can't be in your town. You can't be get the heck out of here. Move. Start ringing the bell. Start calling out unclean. And then people shunned him, okay? And so this was nothing of his own doing. It wasn't like he woke up one day and said, I think I'm going to get leprosy, right? Have you ever wondered people that get cancer? And everybody wants to know what? Why? How? And so every disease, the first thing they ask you, does anyone in your family have this? But can you imagine not knowing? Okay, you got this. Now, how did I get this? Now, the reality today, we know it wasn't his gene pool that was messed up, unless it was some form of skin disease that we don't today recognize. But leprosy comes from a bacteria. And so he could have picked that up anywhere. He could have picked that up at his house on a trip. And so wherever he picked it up, this person all of a sudden is doomed, okay? Because now he is disowned by his family. He's disowned by his society. And so not only does his health fail him, but his family fail him. Because what does the family do? He may have been married. He may have children. Whatever his situation in the family is, they have to basically exile him from the family. And so there were cases where the family would leave food out for the leper to come back and pick up. But those were extreme rarities because most of the time the family just did what? Cut them off. And so obviously if your family disowned you, what happened to your friends? If you want to know who your friends are, get a serious disease. And then what happens? They disappear. And so here you are with a skin disease and your friends fail you. They forgot this man forever. He was pushed off their phone. And the ultimate pain comes from knowing that your religion failed you. Can you imagine if your religion failed you? And so it wasn't his family that threw him out, and it wasn't his townspeople that threw him out. It was the priest. The priest who upheld the law of Moses came and said, hey, buddy, you're done. You are defiled. You are unclean. And so move on. There was no prayer for him. There was no pity for him. He was just sent out. He was exiled. Have you ever been in such a place? I mean, it's a very dark place. I seriously doubt that many of us have been in a place like that. But 2 years ago, maybe we would have said, man, but today is different. How many of you remember these little things? Okay? Now, obviously, I thought about preaching the whole sermon like this, but it creates a little problem, right? A communication thing, so I can't. I'm starting to get fogged up already. All right? And so we have been defiled, if you want to call it, by COVID-19 in its many forms. And so what happened when you were positive? You went and you got the little stick, shoved up in your brain, and then with the little piece of brain matter, somehow they figured out that there was some virus there. And so you waited, and then you had the quick response, and then you had the one that you had to wait about 24 hours, and then, surprise, what happened? You're positive. And then what do? Do you celebrate? No, I mean, woo, okay, no, what am I supposed to do? Now here's another word that we all learned really quick. What is the protocol? What is the protocol? The first thing I did was, the funny thing about it is I've never been positive. And so my wife was positive. She kicked me out the room, or actually I kicked myself out the room. We went to the other room. And so you start dealing with the protocol. And so you go and you become what? Well, you become quarantined. You become quarantined, okay? And so just like this leper was quarantined, we've been quarantined. And so you can't go out. You can't share this virus with anybody else. And so you have to stay home. And if you stay home, you stay in your room. And then we'll throw the food under the door or something. We'll sneak it in there, open a window or whatever. But and then you're exiled from your family. You're exiled from your work. You can't go to work like that. You can't even go to Walmart. And so what happens is that, if anything, today we can truly understand somehow what this leper had to go through. Now, I walked into a Walmart, okay, obviously during the pandemic height several months ago, and I didn't have this on. I was almost jumped. Several people came around. One lady said something to me, and I'm not going to repeat it. and so then I walked out, and I had, and they came and said, "Do you need one?" I was thrown out, cursed out, and stared out. People are looking at me like, how dare you, huh? Walk into a Walmart without a mask. And so I had my little mask. I put it on. And that was it. Here's what I want you to understand. I experienced a mild version of the social hatred that this leper experienced. When he walked into a place, he was very quickly thrown out, very quickly cursed out, very quickly stared out. The children looked at him, the elderly looked at him, and everyone wondered, what did this poor man do wrong? What was his sin? Okay, and so you understand. Okay, you understand what he's going through. You understand there's no exit, there's no hope, there's no hospital, there's no welfare, there's no Obamacare, there's no nothing for this man. Nothing, no hope. And so then, then something happens. Suddenly he hears rumors among the people that he deals with, probably other lepers, other outcasts, other people who had been defiled, and he hears the rumors of a healer. And so even this outcast leper is paying attention to the gossip that he's listening to, because they're talking about a guy who can do miracles that cleanse people. Now, the stories are impossible to believe. Who's going to believe that this Galilean is going to come and start doing these miracles? And so he starts asking, and so he wondered if he would ever get the chance to experience such a miracle. And he knew in the back of his mind that this was impossible. It was impossible because everyone and everything had failed him. And this man was a rabbi. If there was one person he could not get close to, was anybody in the religious establishment, because he was unclean. And these people were allergic to uncleanliness. And so he wondered, what if he could lose? What if he could win? What would he gain if he went up to the healer and said, "Hey, guy, can you heal me?" What if he went up to this kind healer, Joshua, and asked him to cleanse him from this curse. And so in his head, he must have been flip-flopping. Yes, no, yes, no, no. The guy's a rabbi. The minute that you point yourself in his direction, people will pick up rocks and you will be stoned. And so he decided finally, what do I have to lose? If they stone me, it's a win for me. I'd rather be dead than have to put up with this. And so he goes, okay? And so it says here, in a very short space, it says that he came to him and he fell on his knees. Now, as he walked towards Jesus, now this is the interesting thing. The crowd of people that were with Jesus parted like when Moses parted the Red Sea, because no one wanted to touch him. They wanted to stop him, but they could not reach out and stop him. And so he goes up to Jesus and he does what? He falls on his knees. Now, at the time that he's falling on his knees, everyone is picking up what? Everyone has a rock in their hands. This guy is asking for it. The penalty for his imprudence is stoning. And they all have rocks in their hands. And they're looking to the rabbi for him to say yay or nay. You know how the Romans did? Up or down? They're looking to Jesus. And if Jesus says, nope, this guy gets stoned. And they're all on edge and they're all jittery. This guy is not where he's supposed to be. He's definitely not keeping social distance. And Jesus looks at him as this man falls on his knees and begs Jesus, okay? And what does he say? What does he say? If you are willing, if you wish, he's saying, me katarise. And so this is the Greek, katarise. Now, katarise, can you remember a word in English that comes from that? Katarise, catharsis. You know what catharsis is? It's when all your pent-up feelings are expunged and they come out. And so this word, cleanse me, it's a very strong word, katarise, okay? And so he's saying to Jesus, katarise, cleanse me. Okay, and so this leper that everything has failed for him all of a sudden meets the one person that can give him the good news. Because just like everything has failed for this man, now he will find that Jesus never fails. Jesus never fails. If you are willing, you can catharise me. You can cleanse me. And so the Creator has never failed his creation. The Savior of the world has never failed to save. The God who heals, Yahweh Nisi, has never failed to heal. The love of the world has never failed in his compassion for the sick. Jesus never fails. And he did not fail this leper. So Mark tells us that Jesus was moved with what? With compassion. But this is a very hard word to translate from the original language because it's the verb is splanknois. It's splanknestheis. Now, what does that mean in Greek? Splanknestheis. It means from the entrails, okay? From the deepest of the inside of his being, Jesus felt moved by compassion. And so the Jesus that never fails looks at this man. And so the cleanser, the undefiler, the healer, the power of God personified, not only was moved to compassion, but he moves his hand and he does the unthinkable. He touched him. Now, you talk about a violation of social distance. This is as close as you can get. This was the ultimate violation. This was pretty much suicide. by leprosy because people believed that it was highly contagious. And so Jesus touches this man, and then he says, I am willing, καθαρίσθεσαι. It's not be healed, it's be cleansed. So there was not just a physical healing that happened, there was a moral cleansing. There was a spiritual bath that happens. Katharistati. And so we have a man who goes from all else failing for him to meet the Jesus who never fails. And then the end of the story is kind of sorry because the man who is healed, and again we find our little friend Euthys. What does Euthys mean? Immediately. And so when Jesus says, I am willing, be cleansed. Immediately, Euthys. Okay, the man is made clean. And so the disease left him and he was healed. And so then Jesus does something really strange. Jesus tells him, hey, don't say anything. Now, he sternly warned him. It wasn't like, hey, dude, don't say anything. It was like, hey, please, I command you, do not do what? He says, don't speak to anyone. See that you say nothing to anyone, but go ahead and show yourself to the priest and offer what Moses prescribed for your cleansing. It was a very intricate procedure for cleansing. You had to take like 3 animals and offerings as a testimony to them. And so what does this guy do? The ex-leper fails. Instead of being quiet, instead of doing what Jesus told him, what does he do? He starts shouting it out to everyone. I've been healed. I've been cleansed. And so Jesus gives this ex-leper a command to silence. He gives him a gag order, basically. He makes the man take a vow to silence, and the man breaks it. And so this gossiping leper all of a sudden goes everywhere. Jesus healed me, Jesus healed me, Jesus healed me. He spreads it. Okay? Now, how ungrateful and insensitive can this gossiping ex-leper be? And so we can say, man, he disobeyed Jesus. Jesus told him not to say anything. What is this guy? Ingrate. They told you not to do it. But you can understand the man, right? You can understand. Because if we were in his shoes, we'd probably be doing the same thing, right? We get it. And so the problem is that good or bad, as a result of the man's witnessing, what happened to the privacy of Jesus? It's done. So Jesus goes off, according to the word, back to the wilderness. He says, as a result that this man went to proclaim it widely and spread the news, Jesus could no longer enter a town openly. And so he was out in deserted places. And even in deserted places, what did people do? They came to him from everywhere. And so, do you see the irony? Jesus tells the leper to be quiet, and he doesn't. And then we have to deal with it. Okay? And then we have to deal with it. In our case, it's the opposite. We have been healed, and what do? Jesus has commanded us to go and tell. And so the leper, he told to shut up, and he went and told. And us, he's telling us to tell, and we shut up. Is that like human nature to do the opposite? And so here we are. Here we are. And so I'm going to ask you, we're going to pray in a minute. And if you need to be cleansed, just come before Jesus and say, if you are willing, cleanse me. And the answer is always going to be the same because Jesus never fails. And so maybe you're like the ex-leper, the gossipy leper. Jesus told him to shut up, and he wouldn't shut up. And I use gossipy because gossips are hard to curb. Okay? And so where are we? Okay, if you're in need of Jesus to cleanse you, this is your chance. Just come before him and say, Lord, I want to be healed. Whatever it is, he will cleanse you. And then the other thing is, maybe we are the ones who have been cleansed, and we're disobeying Jesus by being silent. And so if you are being silent, then we need to stop that. We need to start talking. We need to start sharing. And so I'm going to ask you to stand. And in a minute, we're going to have the Lord's Supper. But how do we deal with this? How do we deal with this? We have this leper with a huge issue, completely shunned out, and then Jesus comes and heals him, cleanses him, changes his life. What about you? Whatever you have. And I wish I had more time, but the clock doesn't stop for me. So whatever it is that is holding you down, that is making you a failure, bring it before Jesus and let him cleanse you. And if you have been cleansed and you're not sharing it, then please wake up and open your mouth and start sharing. Father God, we come before you because you are the one who looks at us, who we are. Father, thank you for this amazing story about this leper that had the courage to come before you and experience your grace, experience that Jesus never fails, even though he had failed in so many areas in his life, and so many people had failed him, and yet you did not fail him. So you stand before us today, Lord, whatever failure, whether it's from our own background, or whether it's from our family or our friends or the people around us, our community, our religious institutions. Lord, we bring our failures to you so that we can be cleansed. And Lord, for those of us who have been cleansed, give us the passion so that we can share with others what you have done for us. Make this story resonate in our lives. In Jesus' name, amen. And so I'm going to ask you to sit, and Pastor Mike's going to come and lead us